Greetings folks, Iolair here. I apologize for not having a new video on the channel for the last several days. In fact, it's been a little more than a week I think now, as you can imagine, with all the goings on around the world with the human malware and the situations as things are developing. Putting up new videos hasn't been super high priority, but I have gotten a chance to put together a couple of videos for you. In fact, this is going to be a back-to-back set of ranked battles from the latest season of Arms Race. This match is courtesy of DoubleSeargentCheeseGrill, who is in the premium Tier 10 Royal Navy battleship HMS Thunderer. Now, I've featured Cheese Grill in a few replays before, including one match in the Thunderer that was called Capable, and I'll leave a link to that replay in the video, or in the description, below, for you to enjoy. And that video was a reflection of how capable the Thunderer was as a ship. When she was in development, she was generally not very well received, but she received a number of buffs, and now I think she is widely lauded as being among the most effective Tier 10 battleships in the game right now in the current meta. So this is Arms Race. The mode is 7v7 Tier 10 ships, and part of the objective, well, not necessarily the objective, is to capture these buff points, although you can win without taking any. The key, obviously, is to either sink all of your opponents or capture the middle circle, which shows up several minutes into the battle, and then win on points. Either way can work. It greatly improves your chances if your team can capture a number of the buffs, and unfortunately, due to a bug in the replay system, this little message that we see in the center of the screen called press to open the list of buffs, unfortunately I cannot dismiss that, so we will have to tolerate seeing that both in this replay and the following replay. So the Thunderer is basically the Conqueror with the 457mm guns. Now, when the Conqueror did have access to the 457mm guns, she generally was not seen as very effective or quite as effective with the bigger rifles. But the Thunderer has a significantly better Sigma, and so she's much more accurate, even though she has fewer rifles. And that makes her a very potent ship indeed. And at 457mm, she can easily overmatch pretty much most cruiser surfaces, even when well angled. And she is very, very potent against battleships. Now, one of her key limitations is she has a relatively small health pool to start with. She starts at 82,900 out of the box. She gets more of a traditional repair party consumable, repair party consumable, in contrast to the Conqueror, which gets the super heal. In fact, here, Cheese Grill is actually quite fortunate that he didn't take a more serious set of damage from the Kremlin. The other big downside of the Thunderer and the upper tier Royal Navy battleships is that they have very exposed or very easily penetrated citadels, and that was the result of some nerfs that came into play in 2019. And we're going to see a couple of cases where Cheese Grill is going to be both, I think, quite fortunate as well as being very effective in how he engages a couple of his battleship opponents, as Cheese Grill lands a couple of citadels on this Des Moines that's sitting out in the open, and who is really, frankly, living on borrowed time. Next salvo is going to go out here, but he's only going to get 3 overpens in this, and he is not going to finish off the Des Moines as Cheese Grill bumps into his allied Montana here. In fact, it's going to be the torpedoes that we see on the left-hand side of the screen from the gearing that's actually going to sink the Des Moines, and then Cheese Grill is going to move farther down the west flank and engage a couple of the opposing battleships, the Kremlin and the Republik, as the Des Moines does indeed go down, giving the Allies first blood. Unfortunately, the Allied Hindenburg here on Cheese Grill's port side is also quite vulnerable, as he's kind of in front and center, although he does have some island cover to give him some protection, but he isn't going to last for too much longer as the opposition starts to move a little more westward and can get firing shots on him. So, yeah, the Thunderer has been, like I said, highly lauded as a very effective battleship. A couple of notes on CheeseGrill's ship build. He has mostly a tank build, but he does make a couple of variation or a couple of changes from a traditional build. He takes the steering gears modification 2 upgrade in slot 4 that gives his ship a little more maneuverability. The Conqueror and the Thunder are already known to be actually quite maneuverable, and getting the extra rudder shift is also very useful on this battleship, making it quite nimble as he lands a citadel on the Smolensk. And the other difference that CheeseGrill takes in contrast to a traditional tank build is he takes the Jack of all trades skill, which improves or reduces the cooldown time of all of his consumables, not just the damage control like High Alert does. And he also obviously takes the November Foxtrot signal to sort of doubly boost the cooldown or improve the cooldown time. So one of the other advantages of the Thunder is it has a very quick reload, and in fact with the main battery modification 3 upgrade in slot 6, which CheeseGrill does have, her reload is just shy of 23 seconds before adrenaline rush is factored in. And so again, with a very good rate of fire, very high caliber guns, this is a very effective battleship. Now this is where things start to get pretty interesting for CheeseGrill. He is up against two potentially very potent battleships, the Kremlin and the Republic. The Kremlin is also very squishy side on, has quite an exposed citadel, and does not perform well in a drive-by situation, but it is otherwise exceptionally tanky, especially bow on, and is quite resilient to not only AP but also HE because it has 60 millimeter deck, and so there are very few classes and types of ships that actually can penetrate its deck, and so it makes it a very resilient battleship. Now, CheeseGrill is pushing in here, staying bow on to the Republic, staying very well angled with the Kremlin. In fact, the one of the other nice things I think of the Thunderer is and the Conqueror is that their rear firing angles are actually very good, so they don't have to expose too much side to get all of their guns into play. As he sends his front turrets out on the Republic, and I think he's going to send his back guns here on the Kremlin, or maybe he's going to wait for the reload to come into effect. He's being shot at from the side by the Kurfürst, but Kurfürst is quite far away, so that's a little more difficult of a shot. The Kremlin does take a torpedo. Kremlin, in my opinion, fired too early here. This is part of the reason that CheeseGrill was able to survive this engagement, as the Kremlin simply fired too early. But CheeseGrill did hold his fire as a good battleship captain should in a drive-by situation. Wait till he can get an assured strike on the belt at a flat angle, and he does take down the Kremlin. So now he's going to turn away from the Smolensk. Obviously, the Smolensk has torpedoes. He is just within torpedo range, lands another Citadel hit, and then somebody else finishes off the Smolensk. And CheeseGrill has earned himself high caliber. Now, one of the things that I think many people have observed with the arms race is that you can have multiple players earning high caliber because, one, there are fewer ships involved, and the engagement levels are much closer, so big strikes are much more common. But secondly, with the repair buff that most teams tend to pick up that gives them sort of gradual healing over time, that significantly increases the amount of potential damage that can be delivered and taken. And so earning multiple high calibers among the same team is not uncommon in these games from what I've seen. The Republic here is simply giving way too much side. In fact, he's fortunate that he wasn't finished off there. Generally, if you hit the Republic dead center or in the rear third of the Citadel, it's much easier to get a Citadel hit than in the front third. That's my experience. I think that's pretty consistent with what other players see. He's going to shoot into the superstructure here, get a few more hits, and I think he is going to finish off the Kremlin here Again, this is a quite dangerous situation. He doesn't want to give full broadside to the Kurfürst because, again, the Thunderer is very vulnerable to a drive-by deletion. He is going to finish off the Republic, and he has to stay angled in here against the Kurfürst. Now, if I were in the Kurfürst here, Kurfürst is very unlikely to take a Citadel hit. There's a slightly vulnerable region forward of the forward gun if you can get through the forward athwart ship, but it has to be carefully aimed. In this case, this is just going to be all penetrations with no Citadel hit. And again, this is in a place where I think the Kurfürst executed incorrectly, although he was getting wedged between two Tier 10 battleships. But on the assumption that he should have been going for CheeseGrill here, he should have his guns lined up to kill him off, but he didn't do that. So very good brawling by CheeseGrill here in the Thunder. This is atypical in my experience of playing the Conqueror and what I've seen with the Thunder and what I've seen other players do. They tend to work more from range with this battleship, but very close engagements, and this is very well executed by CheeseGrill. He's up to almost 282,000 in damage. Impressive numbers so far. There's only one opponent, the Shimakaze, and he is indeed in the cap, as we can see from the center cap that's being taken. It's very important in these arms race matches that the cap either be taken or at least contested, because the team that has the cap will earn 10 points every 3 seconds, and that ends up closing games very quickly if the cap is not contested, or if it's taken and not contested. Games can end up end very quickly, excuse me. Now the Kurfürst is going to move forward here. He is obviously going to run his Hydro. I think I may have said this was a Shimakaze and the cap is actually a Daring, so I apologize for if I made a mistake there. Daring is obviously going to need to sail away with the Kurfürst, hopefully running Hydro. I don't remember if he did, and staying bow in to the Daring. The Daring is not going to last for very long. In fact, he has now been detected. And we'll see how CheeseGrill does here. He does switch over to high explosive, which is definitely what I would do with only one opponent remaining, being the Destroyer. And these are very high potency HE shells. He doesn't quite finish off the Daring, gets him down to just a few hit points, earns himself Confederate, as we're going to wrap up this match. And in fact, I think it's going to be the Montana that is going to finish off the Daring and win the game for the team. So excellent outing. 293,000 in damage, 3 kills, high caliber, Confederate, Dreadnought. Very well played by CheeseGrill in the Tier 10 Royal Navy battleship HMS Thunderer. So thank you very much, CheeseGrill, for sharing. I hope everybody enjoyed the replay and the commentary. Please do leave your comments below. And as always, we hope to see you out there on the virtual seas, and we wish you happy sailing.